All right, welcome. It's the 29th of December, 2022. My name is Eric. The name of my YouTube channel is Eric's Eye Opener. This particular video we're going to call Life on Earth. And we have a kind of a theme here. There's a kind of a contrasting, let's just say it's symbiotic, right? Because the next video will be called Obey Your Masters. And we're going to understand this kind of hierarchy of life, how always a certain group of people take control within the human element here, and we are basically the victims of the few who control the many. So we're going to get into that. So I want to start out, of course, and people who have watched any of my videos know that my theme is basically who rules the world, how they do it, where they're taking us. And of course, it's that good. And of course, primary influences Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, George Orwell, 1984, and Ray Bradbury with the censorship, right? Fahrenheit 451. So I watched actually a TV version of Animal Farm yesterday, 1999. Really good. I really liked it. Of course, it's much different. It's a short version of the book, and a lot of things are a little different. Um, but it was super interesting. So I want to start out with the fundamentals here. Okay, I live near what I would refer to as a wildlife preserve. There are coyotes and all kinds of wildlife out there. It's a big area owned by the archdiocese here and the seminary. It's kind of a split, right? And I walk through there. It's very magical. Very old cottonwood trees. They're very, very large. And I look at them as doctors. And I look at this entire area, this woods, as a hospital. And the reason I do that, and I explain it like this, is so that everybody has kind of a story version of how life works, right? I ask people often, do you like mushrooms? And if they say no, I'm like, well, you probably wouldn't be here without them. And so it's not even probably from how we understand it, right? Scientifically, from all the research that's been done. So, all right. So, and I'm talking about land life. What goes on here is under the ground, you have a conversion going on. The fungi that live under the ground actually are able to convert decaying organic matter into nutrients, right? And this is a symbiotic relationship. The plants actually, through photosynthesis, send down sugars that they produce, right, through this process of photosynthesis. And that makes the fungi or the fungus stronger. And what's going on now is these giant trees are able to extract nutrients from the fungi, and they delegate it as a doctor would, right? They understand which plants and which other trees are deficient in which nutrients, which vitamins and minerals. And of course, we're talking about phosphorus, which is so important in growing, and nitrogen. And so that's what's going on, guys. It's fascinating. It's as if they tap into the pharmacy. The fungus under the ground is the pharmacy, and then they write the prescription to the entire environment. And it's just wonderful to walk through there and understand that this is what's going on. And then we have something called monoculture. We have a problem with our banana crops right now. They're very diseased, and we may lose bananas simply because what we've done is, and we do this with so many different areas of agriculture, we pull things out of their environment, their habitat, right? And we bring them into an isolated position because we want to maximize the production of these things. And what happens is this weakens them, right? When you look out into the woods, into the environment, all these trees and plants, they all complement each other. They make each other stronger. We'll give you an example here on a human level. So, people, we have racism. People are afraid. They want to keep people separate. Well, it's just like with a virus. When a virus spreads, it spreads because generally people haven't built up an immunity to it, right? When people come from faraway lands where the virus is, they expose other people. And so this is all about building up a tolerance to things, and that's nature's way. And doctors are trying to cheat that. And I'm not condemning medicine. What I'm saying is that there are certain attributes that you cannot duplicate that are provided by nature. This is a very miraculous process. And so another example would be Native Americans here. They have never built up the tolerance to alcohol, which is a toxic substance. And in these other cultures in Europe and the East, they've had it for thousands and thousands of years. So, the Native Americans are very vulnerable to liver disease and kidney disease, and their organs just can't handle this toxic substance, especially at a quick pace, right? So that's what we're living in. I mean, we also know through research that, every year there's these huge flats in the deserts. If you look at what's going on with regard to, well, the Sahara, you have all these very old microorganisms, and these winds kick up on an annual basis. They kick up all these microorganisms and blow them across the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and they fortify the lands, basically the ecosystem, the agricultural process that's going on naturally in the Brazilian rainforest, right? And so they also tell us that it's quite probable that the Bahamas, the coral reefs, were built by this process as well. These things blow across the ocean, and it's a natural process. So I need a drink of water. So all of this stuff is very fascinating, guys. And it shows you the cycles of the earth and how nature does take care of everything. But there's a lot of interference by humans, and like I said, it's not always good. Medicine is very good, and it does help people to live longer lives. It helps us in emergencies if we have a car accident or something like that, emergency surgeries. But cosmetic surgeries are not really the best idea. And whatever. I don't want to get into that because that's a whole nother area. But I want to explain now something very, very important, because I talked about Aldous Huxley and Brave New World, George Orwell, 1984, Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451. So we're going to give you an example here of, there's a split between the intellect and the emotion. And this is how they target us with propaganda. See, what we want, and when I try to make things more comprehensive here, what I want to do, my effort is basically a contagion. I want to create a contagion, and I want to make concepts indelible inside of people, right? By telling this little story. But what they do, and I'm talking about the families that own the Federal Reserve, the people that control everyone. I've gone through this in other videos. I don't want to elaborate on it too much right now, but they control people through propaganda, and they target the split between the intellect and the emotion. They want to make people angry. They create a divide. They have this Democrats and Republicans. Everything is about, now here in this position, you would create a dichotomy of ideologies, right? And really, they have people supporting the same things. Doesn't matter where you're Democrat or Republican. You're supporting expansion of wars, expansion of Wall Street, erosion of civil liberties, destruction of the working class, and pollution. There's no such things as a party being better on pollution. It's simply not true. All they're better at is rhetoric. That's it. Okay, so that is kind of an example of how they actually utilize control in people. I've given so many examples of it. Walter Lippmann in World War I was able to convince people that war was a good thing. 1 week after we entered the war, we entered the war on April 6th of 1917, and a week later, Walter Lippmann formed the Creel Committee, right? He referred to people as the masses as a bewildered herd, and they needed to construct belief systems for us. In this case, they needed to make us believe that war was good because it was opposition to the war, okay? And I can give you a ton of examples of PR people that were very powerful like this, that control the masses for this small group of people, all right? So another great example would be that I like to use is, let's say that you went to another country like Namibia or Zambia, someplace where not that large of a demographic speaks English, and you produced an artwork on a giant wall, on a giant building. It was very beautiful. Aesthetically, it just kicked butt, right? And then, colors were beautiful. And somebody who came to these people and did speak English and could actually tell them what it said, and it was actual profanity, right? But the idea here is that the initial experience of what they saw is now indelible. Doesn't matter what you tell them. They see beauty in it, right? And this is what we saw with Brave New World. As Aldous Huxley said, people were happy in an environment where they ought not to be happy because their freedom had been completely taken away. We see that now. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, but I see the Democrats as much more vulnerable, and they're tools for the establishment more than the Republicans are. And I see Republicans questioning things. And I'm a person who considers myself to be left. I'm a big fan of the old Wobblies Union, right? It was a great, these were the people that were opposing the war. They understood what was going on. They understood that the banks instigated the wars. They funded both sides because they owned the banks, And they also owned all the multinational corporations that supplied both or all sides in the war. Smedley Butler understood that, right? One of the greatest military people we've had in our history. He was a World War I Marine general. So anyway, this is the idea, guys. The idea here is that this is life on Earth, but life on Earth has also created a human element that's very vulnerable, very special, and we have this creative process. We have these emotions. I mean, we see them in animals as well, too. But, you know, we seem to perceive ourselves as sentients at a higher level, right? And, you know, we do question things. We are able to do things, but the problem here is that this capacity for independent thought, and I did a whole series on this distinction between intelligence and the capacity for independent thought. It's very important. When we see academics in great academic institutions, they have this wonderful capacity for data storage. It just grows. The more you engage it, the more it grows, right? But knowledge is useless without the capacity to properly engage it. And you can't properly engage it if you don't have the capacity for independent thought. If you don't stop filtering, well, if you don't stop actually accepting all the propaganda, right? And again, all of this is created on a level that makes this indelible quality very hard to fight off. And people have been believing things since they were children. I'm a victim. We all are, right? I find out, I'm sure you have too. You find out that you've been believing something all your life that was incorrect because you heard people repeat it over and over again. Well, and unfortunately, that's easier to overcome to, you know, the high technology that's actually incorporated into this deception of cognitive conditioning and mass hypnosis now. So, all right. So I hope those examples were good. And I hope everybody realizes that getting mad makes us lose control and it makes us easier to actually maneuver, right? And so, all right. So that being said, look, I want to speak on something with regard to this had a lot to do with the Animal Farm as I watched that movie, the 1999 version of it. You know, the pigs took control. They actually wrote a constitution. It was very similar to what Lenin and Stalin did. They had all these decrees that were great, right, when they started, but they actually, I don't want to say they redacted them. They didn't augment them, right? Or they augmented them for themselves so that they could break all the rules, just like we see with bankers and everybody else here. There is no constitution, guys. You know, when George W. Bush passed the Patriot Act, and of course Obama, his Section 1021 of the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, we no longer had any rights. It wiped out the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth, Sixth, and Seventh Amendments. We have no right to due process if they decide that. So what I'm saying is things are catching up with us. And life on Earth is beautiful. And it was amazing to see that kind of parody. You know, well, it's not, I mean, not really a parody. It's really more of an analogous, you know, presentation of the animals in a form where they actually spoke English, spoke our language. And it was just so well done, guys. It's fabulous. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I look at, also look at, okay, you know, there's a concept called tragedy of the commons. And that could be employed in this too, because when we saw that the pigs decided that they were going to get more of everything and the other people were going to be kind of the slaves, they would do all the work, just as it is here in human, you know, existence. We do all the work, and these small families, these people that own all the major corporations and all the banks, they get all the money. They benefit from it, right? And so there's a concept called tragedy of the commons. And, you know, to give the most common example would be a fishing hole. And let's say that you have several parties, several groups that actually sustain themselves from this fishing hole, right? Well, if one of them was to throw off the balance by overfishing it, then we wouldn't have a future. And the Iroquois Native Americans were a tribe on the East Coast, and they had something called seventh generational sustainability. And they properly tilled the soils, they didn't overfish, and they understood how to look 7 generations ahead and sustain their people, right? They understood how the land worked naturally. They didn't need our modern science to do it. They figured it out. And so, yeah, this is very, very important stuff. So, you know, there's always this question of, is greed something that's innate, or is it a product of what humans do? And it's both, of course, because the innate aspect of it is not such an ugly greed. The innate aspect of this is survival, right? People are greedy because they want to survive, and that's kind of that's a byproduct of capitalism too. You can never have enough, and and that's what, of course, Animal Farm was, and that's why Roger Waters did a great job with his album. Animals was really good. It was basically this was a testament to how destructive capitalism could be. And so let's see here, guys. What am I looking at for time? So I don't want to make this too long, but I do want to talk a little bit more about. Well, let's take this to the basics here. There was a philosopher named Descartes, and he did a comparative analysis of the human body to a clock. He was born in 1596, so he was a French guy a long time ago. And this analogy could be taken a long way. There's all these working parts in the human body. There's all these working parts in the clock, but they comprise one unit in the end. Ludwig Feuerbach, the German philosopher, who actually did a critique on religion, and a very generous one. He just said this was simply humans looking at their highest potential, right, and imagining their highest potential. But he did a collective human view, right, as if we all form one unit, and all life on the planet, we can look at it, forms one unit. The entire solar system, the entire galaxy, and then all of existence is just a lot of working parts comprising one unit, right? And I think we would probably want to imagine that it's searching for perfection somehow, which we'll probably never find. I guess that would be, in a way, the singularity, of the comprisal, the constituents of life and Earth. I mean, there's life in rocks. People don't realize that. Rocks have incredible quality. So the amazing thing here is that we want to look at how important it is, because I talked about disease and how important it is to have different, not just culturally different people, but genetically different people, slightly different, right, coming from different continents and forming one unit so that we would gain strength from that. We would gain a resistance, a tolerance to diseases like the banana crops, right, that are getting disease now because they were pulled out of a habitat where they were surrounded by diversity. Okay, so man, all of this is really big time, and that I'm going to go a little metaphysical on everybody. There was a mathematician named Ramanujan. If I'm not mistaken, he was born in 1887. He was born in a very small town, part of a bigger city in India, but it was a small town, and he had this incredible talent for mathematics, this conceptual understanding of theoretical mathematics. And he sent a letter to Cambridge, and somebody, I think his name was G.H. Hardy, saw some of his work and said, wow, we got to get this guy over here. And they brought him, and it's an incredible story. There's a movie on it. It's called The Man Who Saw Infinity. I highly recommend it. But anyway, I get emotional talking about this, but they couldn't figure out how this guy knew all this, right? How he could come up with all these incredible equations. And he claimed that all of this was a product of dreams. And all of this information was relayed to him by the wife of Vishnu in his dreams, okay? Vishnu basically being the balancing act, right? The preserver between Brahma and Shiva. Shiva, the destructor, and Brahma, the creator. And I mean, Shiva in a way is all encompassing, but all of this stuff is very complex, but it's just amazing that that's where he said he got that. There are many unexplained things in life. Dorothy Eady, who claims she was the concubine of Seti I, and there have been many people of science that have been dumbfounded by her stories of ancient Egypt. She eventually moved there. She fell down the stairs as a kid, and when I think she might have been in a coma. When she came out of it, she had all this knowledge, right, about ancient Egypt. And there's people like Julianne Kopchak, who fell over 10,000 feet from a plane into the Amazon. 11 days later was seen walking out of there. She had a broken collarbone. She was I think she was like 17 years old at the time. And then you've got like Ed Leeds Scallion, who was the man from Latvia, had a hard breakup. He moved to Florida from Latvia, and he built something called Coral Castle, which seemed to defy gravity. He did it all himself. He moved these giant blocks and created this giant castle out of coral stones. And so there are many inexplicable things in life, right? And to explain some of this, I guess I think it's really important to understand that we break things down on a subatomic level, where we don't have the same physical laws that seem to apply here, right? And all of this, everything seems to change at this point. Now, there's an experiment called the double slit experiment. I suggest people look this up. What they did, scientists created a metal plate. They put two vertical slits in that plate, and they forced either subatomic particles or atoms through the slits onto a backdrop. And you have to take a look at the details yourself. But what they found out is that all of these particles and atoms react differently when they're being observed, right? They simply form different patterns when they're being observed. We also found out that once these particles go through there, or atoms, that they can actually occupy multiple locations at one time, which seem to defy all laws that we know. So, this kind of lends itself to me, because I found it to be very true, the power of intention. When you're thinking about something, it happens. I was thinking about a snake. I've been now living in Milwaukee for over 6 years. I moved back to take care of my mother. I was in that woods, that natural preserve that I talked about, and I'd seen garter snakes when I was a kid, but I'm like, I've never seen any of those anymore. I never see snakes, and like a second later, this giant snake, I've never seen one even when I was a kid here, crossed the path in front of me, right? There are many examples of things that I wanted and I couldn't afford them, and they just appeared. And so, yeah, my daughter's a big fan of this. And she's right. I mean, it does work. It really does work. So, all right. So this is a bit of life on Earth and how incredible it is, this environment that we're in. But is it holographic? Is it a simulation? Are we reliving something that actually really did happen at one time over and over again? And are we living different versions of it in infinite dimensions? This is not so wild as it sounds, actually. Physicists believe these things. And so, anyway, this did get kind of, out there. It got to be a little mystical, and it's important. I do think that it's really important that we understand elements of this, and we don't have to be religious. This has a lot to do with like voting. I'm not a big fan of voting. I don't want to get into that too much here, but I do like to say that people don't mind being lost as long as they're not lost alone. And we see that. We could use an example of being lost in the wilderness and being by yourself. You'd be pretty scared. If you had 2 or 3 other people with you, you'd feel a little bit better, a little more secure. If you had 100 people with you, well, first of all, you'd feel more secure because of the numbers. But second of all, those people would probably be resourceful in different ways. That's the wonderful thing about the collective humanity, right? We all have different tendencies. And we find that even though we have different talents, we probably could do anything, right? But we have these things that we enjoy more. And so there tends to be a correlation between enthusiasm and aptitude, right? The natural ability to do things. And if you like those things, you tend to be more productive in those areas. So, all right, guys. So I guess I probably should end this one here. I can take up where I left off on the next one. But I do want to get into obey your masters. And I might not even call it that. It's going to be something like that, but obey is a great word. And if you haven't seen the movie They Live, it's a great movie. And there's a great story around how difficult it was to get that movie actually out to the public. There was a great deal of adversity. And so, yeah. But anyway, I'm gonna stop this. All right. I've been talking a long time now. It's going on 25 minutes. My name is Eric. Eric's Eye Opener, Life on Earth. And it is now the 29th of December, 2022. Happy New Year, everybody, coming up soon. And yeah, let's do it again. All right.